and then I will get to the presentation. Okay, so welcome everyone. As part of the recording, I'm going to reread the first slide. Again, you're in the Leadership Training Zone, Active Listening. My name is Catherine Schonenberger. I am your National President-elect, and today is January 19th, 2017. This presentation has been prepared for the National Association of Women in Construction and will be recorded and utilized for training purposes. This presentation will be made available on the NAWIC National website. Simply log on to nawic.org, click Member Center, Toolbox, Leadership Training, and you'll see Active Listening. By remaining on the conference call, you are giving consent to this recording, to the recording of this session. Again, at the end of this recording, I will open it up to questions and feedback. We're going to stay on record mode at that point. However, all questions and answers and comments and things like that will be anonymous. It will be strictly for transcription only, so that we can put that on as part of the presentation on the national website. Okay. I want you to take a second and read this, and it's basically what we say to dogs and what they hear. And for some of us, the same is true for some people, and that's exactly what they're hearing from you. You may just hear a blah, 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 ginger, blah, 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 ginger. They don't understand the words. And if you think about it, maybe babies are the same. If you're talking to a child, you could say anything to them so long as it's sweet and caressing and wonderful. But if you start yelling at a dog or yelling at a baby, you're going to get the same kind of reaction, because it's not what you're saying, it's how you're saying it, your tone. You want to hear your own tone and become self-aware. Is it threatening, boring, too low, too loud, or just plain too much? So that's a key element to listening. This right here is something that some of you may have heard already, but I'm going to just have you listen to it. And for all the Lindas on the line, this one's for you. But this could be someone that you may have had a conversation with recently. So we're going to take a few seconds and just listen to Mateo. He's all of 3 years old.
Listen to me. Like I do this all the time. As I go at the house or to the door, Dad has his toys, and then Matthew has all his toys.
Okay, but I have to yell at you guys.
Listen.
Okay, what?
Like everything you do at this house, it can touch everything at Grandma's house.
Okay.
Okay, then what?
Then you're not listening to me.
Then you're not listening to me.
I think we get the point. Mateo is not going to lose that argument, obviously. And it goes on and on. If you guys want to hear the whole minute and 40 seconds, you can hear that too. But basically, it's how conversations usually go. It's ganging up on one side and letting go on the other. This is another one that I wanted to bring back, an oldie but a goodie, Hans and Franz. Hear me now and believe me later. And it lets a couple of things happen. I say this saying a lot, sometimes in Arnold Schwarzenegger speak, but not usually. But really what I want you to do is, when you're ready to hear it, let the words sink in. You may not understand me now. Hear me now and believe me later is let it go down. And sometimes it'll take a little bit, and it goes along the lines maybe of when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, or just simply an aha moment you're going to have. So don't disregard what you're hearing as things that you didn't quite listen to correctly in the first place. Shave Ezra, this refers to a commercial that came out a few years ago when the husband doesn't quite hear his wife correctly. I know no one in this audience ever has had a husband do that to them. But instead of hearing Bathe Ezra, which is the family dog, he actually hears Shave Ezra. The dog was not the type of dog to be shaven. So, of course, that was a disgusting thing. And then this last bullet that I'm showing you is song lyrics. These are too personal. Now, you guys can all have your own conversations right now about the song lyrics that you screwed up in your life or misheard, because that's a matter of listening. And when you're ready to hear the words correctly, that's when, you have that aha moment again. The first one, the bathrooms on the right. I'm going to throw my husband under the bus on this one, but this is Creedence Clearwater Revival, Bad Moon on the Rise. And he thought those words said the bathroom's on the right, which cracked me up, but nonetheless. Mine was the Beatles. Thank you, Vicki. Mine was the Beatles, Paperback Writer, and I took it as Take the Back Right Turn. And I'm not kidding. I did not discover those lyrics were Paperback Writer until I was well into my 20s, and long before I was in traffic control, ironically. But think about it, and those song lyrics, and I'm sure you all have them, and that's what you're thinking about right probably at this moment. Listening and dispelling the myth, listening may be thought of as passive and compliant acts, but how many times have you been affected by how a person is listening to you? One of the disadvantages of doing this on the way that I'm doing it right now is that I can't see you. I can't see what you're doing or not doing, perhaps, but listening is definitely highly selective and definitely highly subjective. One of the reasons why I have everyone on mute is because I'm not hearing the clicking of the keyboard. I'm not seeing what you're doing. I'm not sure of what interruptions you're dealing with on your end, and it's that kind of thing would affect me as a speaker. So think about that. The listener has equal power to the speaker or the talker. How do you feel when a person isn't paying attention to you? How do you feel when a listener is looking at their watch, doing some other activity, or not acknowledging you at all and what you're being said? Feel like you're talking to a wall? Well, that's the negative power that a listener can have. When it's complete eye contact and attention and heads nodding, all that other good stuff, that's when you can make a positive impact on what the speaker is trying to convey. Our perception about a person, a situation, or a subject can influence our reception on how much we will pay attention. So those three words, perception, reception, attention. What is in the mindset of the listener? We first have to be interested in the first place in order to even want to listen. Think about it the next time you chapter books its next event or speaker. Is the subject of the topic relevant to the audience? Is it a draw? You know, if OSHA 10 isn't something that your chapter, wants to expound upon right now, you don't think it's going to attract guests or things like that, take that into consideration, because that person that's coming to maybe give that presentation is going to have deaf ears, blank stares, no one's interested, or not come at all, which is even worse. Okay. There are basically three levels of, or styles of listening, and I'm going to define them in greater detail. Level 1 is empathetic, level 2 is logical, and level 3 is what I call selfish. In the empathetic listening, this is the all-in listener. This is the most effective, which is what we call, in this particular presentation, active listening. You're going to be aware and in the present moment. We've heard the word mindful. It's almost being overused at this point, but it's in its own self, that's what you have to do. You have to stay involved. Every sense is focused on the message that the speaker or the talker. At this level, listeners refrain from judging. They refrain from judging and place themselves in the other person's position, attempting to see things from his or her point of view, suspending one's own thoughts, not letting yourself get distracted, and giving that full attention to the speaker completely, including body language, tone, and intent. If you guys could see me right now, my hands are flailing all over the place. You can't see me right now. I can't see you right now, but it's part of that. And so my tone, my intent, I'm staying up by using my own body language. This person in an empathetic situation is listening to understand, okay? When you listen as an empathetic person, like you're putting yourself in that person's shoes, just shut up for a minute. Just sincerely be quiet and pay attention, because this person may start rambling and solve their own problems all at once. I know in my own case, and I'm very guilty of this, I jump in there too soon. I try to advise, or I try to solve the problem. I don't want them to be in pain. That's just, I want to make sure that they're all okay. If you listen first, then you'll assist them in getting it clear in their own mind, and then it can also reduce a lot of tension. Okay, let the air be clear, the hostility goes away, and seriously, if you just give them a few minutes to air it out, they'll pay attention to you more. There's going to be that cooperation that gets facilitated, because people do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that is true. And especially for an empathetic listener, you're going to have a plus gain resolve every single time. It promotes communication. Listening is half the battle, and it's probably the more difficult. Also, when you're listening and you're engaging, it develops an active mind. You're not going to fall asleep. You're not going to lose attention, because it's really you have to. This is a thing that you definitely have to do. And it also, when you're doing that with somebody, when you're acknowledging and by continually trying to understand the feelings behind the words, keeps the mind active and attentive. And when you listen intently, you're showing the talker that she has worth, dignity, and something to offer, an attitude that makes others feel good about themselves. How positive is that? So that is level 1. That's where we want you to be all the time. And I will just say that in the next 2 levels that you're going to see, all 3 levels we are in at some point or another all day long. If we were empathetic listeners all day long, we'd be dead on our feet probably, because we just have to space out every now and again. However, this is really where you want to be, especially in those conversations that are difficult, or in a meeting that's extremely important. This is where you want to be. The next type is logical, also called dangerous. At this level, people stay on the surface of communication and do not understand the deeper meaning of what is being said. They're hearing the words but not really listening. They try very hard to hear They try very hard to hear the words the speaker is saying, but make little effort to understand the speaker's intent. It's dangerous because the listener is concentrating only slightly on what is being said, and the speaker may be lulled into a false sense of being listened to and understood. I know that that's happened in my household many a time. But certainly on the business side of things, or in your chapter, and as you're giving your presentations, pay attention to how are you connected, and that will be avoid being just the logical. You have to be involved. You have to stay engaged and invested, I guess is the word that I'm looking for. Types of listening. The third part is the selfish, or I call it the faker. You're listening in spurts. You're tuning in and out. You appear to be quiet, passive, without responding. Okay, you're one that allows the discussion just go enough to get a chance to talk. Often the person is facing the attention while talking about unrelated matters, while thinking about unrelated matters, making judgments, forming rebuttals or advice, or preparing what he or she is going to say next. They're listening not to understand, but to respond. And if you're listening like that, you're not part of the conversation anymore. It's one-sided. And that's where there can be a lot of misinterpretation, probably a lot of miswording of conversation, etc. And this last one, a blank stare, is an uncommon. So if you're getting blank stares, it's time to take a break. If you're the presenter, or if you're the talker or speaker, take a break. I know when I do my workshops and I see people glazing over, it's time to take a break. I can't see any of you, so we're not taking a break. Oftentimes in this particular pattern, the selfish is more interested in talking than listening. So I've got you guys over a barrel tonight, so I apologize, not really. All right. Become a better listener. Here's some suggestions. Firstly, especially in a difficult situation, you want to search for something that you can use. Find common areas of interest. Again, going where a great listener is utilizing all the senses, that includes smell. And unfortunately, if that's a factor, you have to somehow overcome it. We do work in construction, and perhaps we're around a few, people that may have something emitting from them every now and again, and that can be true anywhere. If you've ever been in a store where someone is over-cologned or over-perfumed or something along those lines that distracts you, you have to find something that you can either take a deep breath and move on, or get out of the area altogether, or just know that this is not going to happen right then and there. You can do that. You can dismiss yourself as a listener. You want to take the initiative by making the communication two-way and have a conversation. Whatever you're talking about, make sure it's relevant. Make sure that you both are are able to communicate on it. Okay, hold your rebuttal. Do not interrupt. And I'll bring in a sister here. Stay engaged. And I know this happens in all families, but I have a sister. I call her Sister Interruptus. There is no conversation I've ever had with my sister, and I've had her for nearly 60 years, her 60 years, my 53, that she has never not interrupted me when I've started to speak. So I've learned, because I have to listen to the way I speak to her, I have learned to talk in very short sentences. And I have learned that when she interrupts me, I just have to wait until she's done and then start again. So as a listener, don't interrupt. Do your best. If you have to sit on your hands and maybe hold your little finger tight, do something to remind yourself not to interrupt. You want to hold your rebuttal. Try to ignore the person's delivery, personality, physical appearance if it distracts you. There's some people that we just can't stand, but you have to take the best and leave the rest, because otherwise you'll never get through it. And it's not going to be perfect every single time, but you have to make sure that what you have out in front of you is something that you can work with. All right, and keep an open mind. This last part, ask questions to clarify for understanding. The art of asking a question is a webinar unto itself. But keep in mind that when you ask a question, you need to be prepared to listen for the answer. By asking a question, you can also keep the talker on message. If they use an unfamiliar phrase, you can say things like, could you elaborate on what you meant? If the talker starts to digress, you can ask, perhaps I'm mistaken, but weren't you going to tell me blah? If the talker starts going in circles, which none of you can tell me that I am because I can't hear you, you can simply say, let me summarize what I think I understood you said when you said A, B, C, etc. Was there anything else affecting the problem? There's certainly diplomatic ways of you to redirect the conversation, but by asking the question, you take that control back. You can be very effective as a listener if you know what kind of questions you're asking. And again, remember to listen for the answer. Keep the talker on message. Encourage better listening. As the talker, speaker, or presenter, know what you're going to say. Be clear with the objective or the information. Clear equals clear, fuzzy equals fuzzy. Make sure that your knowledge of the listener is based on facts and not assumptions. Assumptions, we all know how to spell assume, okay? You want to know your audience. Read body language. We do not persuade people who have different interests than we do by talking about our own interests. You have to engage. You have to bring them, you have to know something about them so that you can understand them, and again, show genuineness. You have to be genuine. If you try to fake it on this one as a speaker, no way. And your audience is going to go blank stare on you. You want to secure the understanding and make sure that you have, you're able to respond appropriately and favorably to what you're reading in your listeners. You want to aid retention, excuse me, bouncing back and forth there. You want to aid retention by asking the listener to restate what he or she thought was conveyed. Get their understanding of it. If possible, keep it conversational, asking for feedback. At the end of this presentation, I'm going to ask for feedback. If there's no questions or things like that, or if you're more comfortable in emailing me your feedback on it, perfect. Pick up the phone. I still talk on the phone on the occasion. But it's important to aid retention, because if you don't get anything from this, then what's the sense of doing it? Okay? Or what's the sense of having the conversation in the first place, no matter what it is? Okay? Now, listening is a forgotten skill. It is a powerful force in human relations. When you listen well, again, you take up 50% of the communication that can get screwed up right off the bat. So it is a skill that needs to be practiced. It needs to be practiced like nobody's business, because one word out of whack, a tone not said right, we know how arguments start, and that is truly a problem. So Pay attention to it. Listening is truly a forgotten skill. Self-awareness, how to listen to oneself to improve how we listen to others. Going back to the sister interruptus that I have, my beautiful Donna, she and I have had many a conversation where she starts out the conversation with, Catherine, you intimidate me. So that hurts, right? Because that's never my intention to intimidate, especially my own sister. But the fact that she said it to me made me more aware of my delivery to her. We've all had those people where their militant delivery to us is so in your face. It's like, wow, that you're taken back and you immediately shut down. So by Donna saying that to me, I became more self-aware of how not only am I going to speak with her in short, small sentences so she doesn't interrupt, but also from not intimidating her. I don't want to be in her face. I don't want to make her feel like I'm in her face. I want her to be able to be comfortable. So you have to know your audience and you have to know yourself. And that's an excellent way to improve how we listen to others and how others will listen to you. Words are powerful. If ever on the eve of something major great or major important, as we are right now, we know that words are powerful. So this is my biggest suggestion to you, no matter what kind of conversation you're having with anybody. Say what you mean and mean what you say without being mean. Kindness goes a long, long way, and I am an advocate of kindness. The premise of this entire webinar is based on Listening, the Forgotten Skill. It's actually a book, a self-teaching guide. It's by Madeline Burley Allen. I was introduced to it when I took a Future Leaders in Construction class through the Associated Builders and Contractors. And ironically, over the 8-month course that it was the only book that wasn't available on audio. So you had to read it, which in my case it's better because if I see it, I remember, my retention's much better. But it was just ironic that out of all the books that we had, this was the only one that wasn't on audio. The other book that I definitely know that I have learned a great deal about listening and knowing my audience has been forever Norman Vincent Peale's The Power of Positive Thinking. There's also the Positive Principle today, and Enthusiasm Makes the Difference. So those 3 books by Norman Vincent Peale, you can't go wrong. They have nuggets of beautiful listening skills and how to approach your practice of that skill. But again, Listening, the Forgotten Skill, if you need more information of that, of course, you can get in touch with me and I will give you more detail if needed. The fun thing is, there is a listening activity. If you guys remember playing telephone as a kid, well, let's bring it back. After you've presented this session to your group, round it off with a true game of telephone. We did this at our last Region 14 Spring Forum a few years ago, and Sandy Field, if she's on the call, I'm not sure, but if not, you can send her an email and ask her about it. We did this, and it was hysterical and most certainly memorable. So these were just a few of the tongue twisters, phrases, whatever you want to do. And if you have enough people, line them up and start it at the end of the line and bring it forward. And it's amazing what people are actually hearing in just a short line. We did it with about 20 women, like I said, and at the end of it, we were screaming, laughing because it was just so convoluted. So that was a fun thing. It's a good activity. It's a nice icebreaker too. Get everybody laughing, because laughter is always good, no matter what the situation is. Okay. This is a quote, forever, forever, and this is exactly why listening is half that battle in a conversation. God gave us 2 ears, but only 1 mouth. Some people say that's because he wanted us to spend twice as much time listening as talking. Others claim it's because he knew listening was twice as hard as talking. And I have a tendency to believe in the latter, as I am a gift of gab myself. So with that, I am going to unmute everyone. And because I haven't quite nailed down the putting you in the queue if you have a question or a comment, we're just going to have to kind of go with it. I'm going to keep you on record, but again, at this point, I'm not going to have, from here on out, it's going to be anonymous, all right? The only other thing that I do want to remember to tell you all is that Our next leadership training zone is going to be February 22nd with Deb Gregoire, and she's going to do the NAWIC election protocol. And if you have any questions on that, more will come out on that. So I'm going to unmute you, and if you have any questions, comments, feedback, you are on.
I have a question.
Okay.
I'm wondering, for those people that you are in a conversation with who have a real hard time landing the plane, how do you reel that in for them to get to the point without being rude or insensitive?
I didn't hear the first part of that. I'm sorry. You kind of broke up. If you're in a difficult conversation, and what?
In a conversation with someone who has a hard time landing the plane, and they're just
okay. I think that the best way you can possibly do that is to ask the question in such a way that you're summarizing what you think they said, but ask the question to cut them off, not to cut them off, but to kind of redirect them back to the point. And if they continue to have trouble, as you say, landing the plane, getting to their point, then maybe there isn't a point. But, just asking the question and clarifying on your end. So what you're saying to me, or the reason why we're explaining this is maybe why or what, but don't leave it. You want to have like a closed loop on that. You don't want to leave it as open-ended as I just said. You want to make sure that whatever the conversation, whatever you think their goal is, ask them if that's what their goal is.
And that would involve interrupting them.
If it's a conversation, it should be able to, if you're in a meeting, and you can play this, but, utilize your tactfulness. I suppose that's probably it. If they're still going on and on and on and on, then, you're going to have to do something to kind of knock it down. And usually it's a question that can do that without being patronizing or rude or any of those negative things.
Oh.
Anybody else? I hear a lot of people chatting it up.
Oh my God. I shouldn't have answered. Oh my God.
Can we say hello?
You can. Hello.
Well, that was very good. That was very good, Catherine.
Thank you, Carol. See, I have my fans out there. I plant them in the audience.
Oh, I felt like I had my mouth taped and my hands tied.
I'll say hi too, Catherine. That was very good also. I agree.
Thank you,
actually,
Maureen.
another book suggestion maybe is How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Oh, yes. Dale Carnegie.
Yep.
How to Win Friends and Influence People, for those that didn't hear it.
Thank you, Catherine. This is Romy in D.C.
Hi, honey.
Beautiful. I love the mindfulness part.
Yes, I would imagine that you could relate to that most definitely. I think of you every time I write the words.
Do you find it necessary after a difficult conversation with someone? Is it best to summarize via, just restating as a summary, or is it better just to say, I'd like to type some thoughts out and confirm in an email? How is the best way to summarize a difficult conversation that kind of floats in and out of the listening and you know what I'm saying? The more difficult the conversation, a lot of times the more different levels, those different styles of listening will happen. You'll zone in and out and be thinking about what you need to say next and that kind of thing. So what's the best way to make sure that everybody's left with the same thoughts at the end of that difficult meeting?
If it truly is a meeting in the respect that it needs to be somehow recorded, I would strongly suggest like a call report almost, whether it be via email or typed up and sent out to everybody with respect to that kind of meeting. If it's truly an emotional meeting where you don't really want it recorded because words are going to fly, which is why sometimes emails can get you in trouble, if it's too much, if the conversation is too much of that. But if it's an oral conversation and you want to have documentation that everybody was on the same page when you left that meeting, I would say definitely summarize it and then have somebody, make sure that it goes down in writing so you can refer back to it. So if the same thing keeps continuing to happen, then you have record of it. Well, we talked about, we said that the napkins, I wish Deb Gregoire is on this call, the napkin is going to be read. So, we agreed on that. And here it is. And we have it documented in this call report after our difficult meeting. So I think to answer your question, Connie, I think it's going to be both ways. And it's dependent upon what kind of conversation you're having and with whom.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Yes,
Yeah.
Catherine, this is Vicki. What would you suggest would be the best way to go about it if you're in a meeting, and it's maybe not even NAWIC related, but you're not actually chairing the meeting, but people are using their cell phones, and sometimes it's just, I think,
Yeah.
it is. They're not listening to what is going on in the meeting. They're too busy on their cell phones, and I think that's very rude. But how would you handle that? I mean, I could see maybe approaching them after the meeting, but if it's something that you're not chairing.
Well, I guess the simplest thing, and I know this is after the fact, but essentially you're a co-listener, and this has happened too many times. The chatty Cathys in the room are having their own conversation, and you can't hear the listener or the presenter. I think that maybe the best way to do it as the presenter or as the speaker or the person that's chairing the meeting is to set the ground rules. And much like we do at the beginning of our forums and fall conferences, say, if you hear a ding, bell, whistle, vibration, whatever, you owe NEF $25 or whatever it is. I mean, that's running, in the front. You're taking care of it up front. But if you're sitting in an audience and someone's really being annoying and they're distracting you from getting the best out of it, I would simply write a note and pass it to them. You don't want to interrupt anyone else around you because then it just, it becomes, that's really difficult.
Right.
That's my suggestion. Anybody else?
Just want to thank you, Catherine. You gave me some ideas.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
And I love that video. Linda, you're not listening to me. Honey.
Yeah, it's right. I'm sick of the kid actually doing this presentation. I'm like, all right, I'm done. Mateo is in my dreams.
Thank you.
You're welcome, hon. Thanks.
Nice job, Catherine.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is from one Catherine to another. Thanks. It was great.
All right, hon. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right, bye. Good night. Be safe. Good night. Bye.
Connie and Doug, you staying on, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And I'll shut off
Stop
the
the
recording.
recording.